let's get into today's topic. All right,
so let's get into today's
topic.
I'm offended by
triggered. I am triggered.
Today's topic, so it's how blind is Lady Justice? All right. So we got Dispo to speak on a few things here. Let's jump into the first question. Just give me some time to read this. All right. So they say Lady Justice is blind to impartiality. However, it appears to many people across the globe that she is more lenient on the side of the wealthy and powerful in our society. For example, Ethan Couch convinced the court that he suffered from affluenza, a psychological condition where he was too rich to know right from wrong. He was given 10 years probation for vehicular manslaughter of 4 people under the influence of alcohol, even though Texas sentencing guidelines for this crime calls for 2 to 20 year sentence in the Texas State Penitentiary. And then in 2014, forgive me, I think it's Akai Gurley, was fatally shot accidentally in East New York by 27-year-old officer Peter Liang. Although he was convicted of criminally negligent homicide, pressure from thousands of Chinese Americans gave Liang's 5-year probation and 800 hours of community service sentence from the Supreme Court. So do you agree that our court systems are more willing to pardon the wealthy and the connected? What you say?
I mean, based on what I've seen, I think that's the way it shapes out. But I gotta say, I was actually being in courts. I became surprised at just how lenient some of these judges are for everybody. I can honestly say, in Massachusetts, we have a lot of fair judges. The judges are very fair. They're about the evidence and whether or not you met every element of a charge, and not necessarily about skin color. I think where the advantage comes for someone who's wealthy is if you're wealthy, you usually live in a wealthy neighborhood. If you live in a wealthy neighborhood, you usually know all the cops, all the police, and everyone in the town. And so therefore, your kids are less likely to end up charged for stupid petty crimes that some kid in Dorchester is going to get charged with, or some kid in Roxbury is going to get charged with. But speaking on these cases in general, let's go into the Ethan Couch.
Okay.
So Ethan Couch, for example, this kid is drunk, and I think they said there was more than alcohol. He had like Valium in his system and a few other drugs, and he hits and he kills a few kids. I just want to highlight those kids were white. So you had white parents who are upset with this decision as well.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So here you have a white kid who is getting a lenient sentence for killing other white kids. So I just bring that up, that you take the race element out of it for a second, because you have white families that were upset with that decision as well. But I would like to point out that he was charged as a juvenile. So when you bring up the Texas statute, I'm sure that's a statute for adult offenders.
I see.
Right? When someone's a juvenile, it's a bit different. So one, he was a juvenile. The other thing that happened with Ethan Couch was he was sentenced to 10 years probation. Judges are smart people. So 10 years probation, whenever you commit a crime and you're placed on probation in the state of Massachusetts, if you violate that crime, you can be detained for the maximum of the charge you were convicted of.
Okay.
Right? So I'll give you an example. If you're convicted of a crime that has 2.5 year maximum sentence, and you're placed on probation for that crime, and then you go out and you violate probation, the judge can detain you and sentence you to that 2.5 years if he or she chooses to do so. So when he got 10 years probation, if he messed up at any point in his life, a judge can sentence him to the maximum amount of time allowed for those crimes. So it's not like he got some kind of deal. Think about that. You got 10 years of this hanging over your head. And what did he do? He posted a video of him at a party with alcohol which led to him being busted for violating his probation. And so then the probation officers were looking to get him and detain him. So Ethan Couch and his mom fled to Mexico so that they couldn't detain him.
Country. Yeah, that was wild.
So then they end up bringing him back to the U.S. and he ended up having to serve 2.5 years eventually anyway.
Okay.
For that crime.
Get that nigga life, man.
Well, here's the thing. I know you want life. I know the parents, a lot of people want life, but you have to look at it from this perspective. One, he was under the influence. And unfortunately, he did kill people as a result of a motor vehicle accident, right? No record, young kid, juvenile. It's very difficult to give a juvenile life, right? So
Shit again, man.
all right. Here's an important thing.
Okay.
When you sit on a bench, what I mean by sit on a bench is if you're a judge or when you're in a courtroom, you have to remove all emotion. It's not about the color of anyone's skin. It's not about the crimes that they committed. It's simply about the letter of the law. What does the law say, and how does that apply to the case at hand?
So let me ask you this then. Do you think that affluenza was an appropriate, I guess, what symptom to
Like diagnosis. or,
diagnosis
I don't know.
for you know what I mean, to get him this only 10-year probation? Because I see what you mean. Like maybe if we remove all of our biases and things like that, that might be a fair, time to give 10 years probation and then the 800 hours or whatever.
Yo, can I kind of like add on to what you're saying?
Yeah, go ahead.
In regards to like the affluenza, right? This kid had the resources to hire a psychologist to say, oh yeah, yo, clearly he's suffering from being rich. However, let's just say the intern, he gets locked up. He gets a court-appointed lawyer, Will that court-appointed lawyer put in that work to get like an expert to say, hey, he's suffering from poor nigga syndrome or something? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I'll answer both your questions. I'll answer Rome's question first. So the affluenza defense didn't work. The judge didn't buy that.
Okay.
So there's no proof that ever played a role in the judge's decision.
Okay.
And that's why you probably haven't seen that defense repeated. For example, if something works, you probably would see it repeated. Like, if that affluenza defense was successful,
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I'm
we would have
definitely
heard
for that shit.
We would have heard a 500. That defense would have been employed like in numerous cases. But this is the only case you've heard of that defense.
Yeah.
And the reason why is usually when you have nothing. Think about it. This kid's dead to right. All the evidence against him. You got dead bodies. You got multiple witnesses that saw him driving. You got it all. Like, there's nothing. What do? You try to pull something you throw something at a wall and hope it sticks.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So that's what this affluenza defense was about. But based on what I read about it, it got more negative reviews, and it was the judge and everyone in the courtroom viewed it more as an insult than anything else. So it definitely wasn't a successful defense. And to answer G's question, so a public defender could request funds from the court to hire an investigator or to hire a clinician to examine the defendant. So if let's take affluenza out of, because that's like so ridiculous and insane, like that's not a real thing. But let's say there was a real mental issue that they were worried about. They can request to have the courts have their own clinicians, so they can see a court clinician. They can ask for funds. Let's say not even any mental illness or condition. Let's just say you were charged with being somewhere and committing a burglary, but they believe that they can get some video from somewhere else and they can get other things. They might ask for some funds to hire a private investigator, and the court will grant them $1,000 to hire a private investigator to research your case. So those are some tools that the public defender can use to
that's
help
dope.
out.
That's affluenza. But what about Peter Liang?
All right. I mean, I figured we could address all these cases one month. So you want to go to him. All right.
Okay.
What I want to point out about him is, one, he was found guilty.
Yep.
So when you're found guilty, you're a convicted felon. As a convicted felon, there's a lot of things, a lot of jobs he can't get, a lot of positions he wouldn't qualify for now based on the fact that he's a convicted felon.
Mm-hmm.
The prosecutor recommended no prison time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing to take into account.
But is that because he's an officer?
Partly. And here's why. Anyone who commits a crime for the first time, it's highly unlikely that you're going to do jail time for it. It depends on the nature of the crime. So he had no criminal record. And he couldn't. He was a police officer. So, like, clearly he had to have a clear record. He had to be someone that they trusted to hold a position of higher authority within the community. So he had no criminal record. Now, the authority they gave him was to police the community, to carry a weapon, and to commit a homicide, a justifiable homicide, if the situation called for it, which it didn't in this case. Now, I also want to point out that NYPD officers testified against him that, the murder of Mr. Gurley was due to his mishandling his firearm. So you have officer testimony, the fact he was prosecuted, but in the end, I believe the reason why he didn't receive any jail time was because he did kill Mr. Gurley in the line of duty. Now, he didn't perform his duties correctly, but he didn't have a firearm illegally, right? He mishandled his gun, which is why he killed Mr. Gurley. And as a result of that, he's no longer a cop, and he's a convicted felon. For his whole life, he's going to be a convicted felon. I think officers have some immunity. It's like you can commit a justifiable homicide. In this case, he was convicted. Don't overlook the conviction, because as you know from many other cases, some people don't even get that. So
So was the judgment based upon the fact that he was an officer, or the pressure from the Chinese American community, or a combination of the two?
I don't believe the pressure from the Chinese American community played any role in it. As you heard me say, the prosecutor didn't recommend any jail time. And we'll get into the prosecutors and prosecution when we get to Freddie Gray.
Yep.
But the prosecutor didn't recommend any jail time before they were protesting. They just don't know that because they're not in the legal offices. They don't know what's going on behind the scene. But personally, knowing what I know about the system, they probably didn't request any jail time for him because he was a police officer. He was given that authority to police the community. He was doing his job. He just mishandled a firearm, and unfortunately it caused someone to lose their life. He was found guilty of that, and he paid the consequence. He's a convicted felon, but to give him jail time, it's kind of like there was no malintent, basically.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
In regards to that, let's just say the prosecutor was actually moving to give him jail time. Would that cause a rift between the DA's office and the police department, or
I believe it would. I believe it would, and which is why when we get into Freddie Gray, I'll speak in greater detail about that. But basically, I don't believe that state prosecutors should investigate police crimes. I believe it should be either the FBI, the DOJ, or some independent source that has who doesn't work hand in hand.
Don't rely upon the
So I think as long as you're asking prosecutors to police the police, that's like asking me to investigate my brother's crime and find him guilty.
Right.
It's just not gonna happen.
That's understandable. Well, the next question moves right into Freddie Gray. So, in cases like Tamir Rice in Cleveland, Eric Garner in New York, and Freddie Gray in Baltimore, where police brutality and excessive force was used on these individuals, why aren't these officers being convicted of criminal offenses? What will it take for these officers to serve prison sentences for their actions?
All right, so this is unfortunate. I just want to say, I want to get this one out of the way real quick. I don't want to spend much time on it.
Okay.
Remove emotion from the situation and just look at this as a scenario basis. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I would have done the same thing. I'm just saying, based on the law, Tamir Rice was a justifiable homicide.
Tamir Rice was a justifiable homicide?
Yes.
I have to hear what your thoughts are.
You have someone in the park with a gun playing around with it. Police roll up. They see someone holding what looks like a real gun. They shoot him.
But is that supposed to be the protocol to jump out? Because when you can see the video, and they like pull up, jump out, shoot.
Yes. I'm saying, once again...
But remember, the 911 call, the lady said she believes it's a BB gun.
So once again, I just want to highlight a few things to you.
Mm-hmm.
One, it's not the way I would have handled the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at the facts as the facts. She said, I believe. She was at... Where was her position? Did she have the gun in her hand? How could she know it was fake? She says she believes it might be fake, but she doesn't know. Right? Now, you're an officer, and you pull up, and this guy has a gun in his hand already. Now, you guys can say whatever you want sitting in this studio.
I'm going to keep it a buck. I'm going to say this. If I was a cop trying to go home to my family, bro,
Exactly.
I'm just being real.
Exactly.
I'm probably going to be bucking.
See,
You know what I'm saying? I'm
here's
just
the
being
thing,
honest.
though, because I don't see, if you look at this, here's where maybe you could say it's like an individual state-to-state police department case. You know, maybe that's an argument that could be made,
Probably
but
that's
I feel like...
homicide anywhere. But
Yeah,
But when
I
you
think
look-
that's
wait,
all.
But
can I
I
ask-
just feel like it's not. It's something like when you look at the video. There's a 12-year-old kid, Joe. You know what I mean? I don't know.
But
know
how does
that.
the police
Yeah,
know how
police
old he
don't
was?
know
Even
that.
when they shot him, they said they think he's 20.
But I guess I don't know that to be like police standard procedure
You how. It doesn't matter if it's standard procedure. All right.
to just jump out and
I'm
shoot.
going to say, you finish this line. You finish this line, intern.
Alright.
Squeeze first. Finish it.
Squeeze first.
Ask questions last.
Ask questions.
Yeah, he was born after the.
He's like, squeeze
Intern,
first.
you just lost a lot of...
He was born in the 90s. He's not gonna know the rest of that line.
That's like when making a band, didn't know the lyrics to Juicy.
Yeah, right. What's the R&B shorty? He the R&B shorty. You know what I mean?
Slice of cheesecake
Right.
right now, bro. You know what I'm saying? And he claims to be a big fan.
Yeah, right.
Nah.
One of Biggie's most famous lyrics is "Squeeze first, ask questions last." What do you think Biggie meant by that lyric?
Amen.
I'm going home by any means necessary.
Exactly.
So even if you friend a foe, if I feel your foe, I squeeze first, ask questions later. Because guess what? I'm still here. So let's be real.
But that's street code.
Yo,
you don't think?
Wait, can I ask
no,
a
it's not
question?
street code. Hold on. No.
That's survival
It's better.
code.
I wanna get a question
Time
in.
out. It's better to be judged by 12 than to be carried by 6, bro.
Exactly.
That's it, yo. And when you got
I
family,
want
you
to. I
think
want to
about
bring.
that
I want to
shit.
bring up like a couple of examples that I've seen. I don't remember the exact details like of the story, but I was watching one of those like top 10 craziest cop story shows or whatever.
Yeah.
And you have a situation where, and I'm assuming anyway, as like an attorney, it's like you have to look at every case as an individual. As its individual case, you can't have any kind of like partial feelings towards, whatever.
Yes.
So this is a story where, and this is all on camera. A white man is waving a gun. He's walking around a neighborhood with a gun in his hand, and there's a few police officers that pull up on him, and they're talking to him, and they're telling him to drop the gun. And while they're doing that, there's a sniper. There's a sniper like off in the distance, and the sniper shoots the gun out of the assailant's hand, and the guy gets arrested. I don't know what happens to him. So they're able to accurately shoot the gun out of his hand, and it's even at a point where it's just like this tiny pistol. The pistol is framed in the broken pieces that it ended up in the police station. And then you also have the story where Jordan Davis, which it's like the Loud Music trial, where Michael Dunn is serving a life sentence and 30 years for each of the other 3 kids that were in the vehicle. So
Michael Dunn's not a cop.
Yeah, exactly.
right, but I guess like
So there's.
I guess it's like when you're looking at the situation with Tamir Rice.
I wouldn't say
and,
bias, protection, but go ahead. I'll explain that.
right, but I guess like what triggered that was saying that by the details of the case, Tamir Rice's homicide looks justifiable. Like I definitely can't like rock with that. So I guess I'm just like looking at
You
those
gotta
two.
remove your emotion once again.
It's
You
not
have to
about
remove your
emotion
It is
because
your emotion. I'm gonna look.
I think even emotion removed though, for real though.
but you have a
I'm only looking at like procedure to just show up.
Right. I'm looking at a
and
grown
say,
man who
Yo,
was able to walk
Can I
away.
keep it a buck with y'all? Yo, let's say me and you were doing a patrol, and let's say intern is waving his hammer or whatever, but I'm like, we don't know for sure it's a real gun. Let's just say it was a BB gun. If you don't shoot, I wouldn't even want to ride with you, bro. I'm gonna be honest.
Here's the thing.
because
Intern
it's
got
like-
the drop on you.
That's what I'm
He
saying.
already-
And
that's
police
what I'm saying.
and the
He
another
already has
reason
his
why
gun in his hand.
I don't, and I also
I
think
guess, like, go ahead.
it's it would be I guess like a little bit more ideal if we could all look at the case and remove our emotions from it, but police officers don't do that. Scared white men don't do that. So I guess it's like when you look at those circumstances, it just seems to me very like unbalanced.
Well, I just want to. The example you brought up where there's a guy waving a gun and the sniper shot the gun out of his hand, and you said they framed that and it's hanging in the police office.
Yeah.
The reason why is because that's called great police work. They're like, this is a time where we executed some great police work. Frame this, and it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But all cops aren't good cops.
I'm gonna be honest. If I was the police chief in that scenario, a lot of them dudes would be on desk duty. Because what would happen if that crazy dude did clap one of those police officers? And I have to explain to that police
I
officer.
mean, listen, there's other.
That's reckless.
Hold
That's
on.
reckless. It's careless.
Let me just jump in real quick. Listen, this is what you have to understand. Bless you.
Thank you.
It's a subjective standard. If a cop feels that their life is at risk, they can use deadly force. And so that's what you have to understand. Now, this guy was waving the gun. Those officers weren't afraid. Cool. In the Tamir Rice case, what you have was someone playing with a gun. And once again, I started it off by saying I wouldn't have handled it that way. But I can't front like I don't understand someone saying I'm not going to risk dying here with someone playing with a gun.
See, but then why are there police departments outside of the country, or even within, maybe some within the country, I don't know, that seem to handle de-escalation a little better than apparently all the cops that are participating in these?
You can't
You know what
compare
I
the
mean?
United States to like other countries. Bro.
Well, I'm comparing people to people. There are some people who can like de-escalate a man with a gun, and then there's people who don't know how to do
I'll
that.
give you a perfect example. Hold on.
There's
Look at
some
the UK.
people who move
Look at
off
the
of
UK.
fear, and then there's some
Police
people who move a little
officers,
strategic.
police officers in the UK used to never carry weapons. After terrorist attacks, now they all carry weapons.
still not-
military grade
They're
weapons.
still not
now.
killing people the way that.
What are you
our
talking
police
about? They won't hesitate now to clap somebody.
I was going to say to
know
you
what I'm
like
saying?
this. If you want to speak and try to de-escalate a situation with someone holding a gun in their hand, peace be on you,
Right?
my
Do
brother.
you, bruh? Do you?
If I got mine, I'm taking them out first. That's it. Squeeze first,
mean-
ask questions last.
So,
None of us are police
That's how
officers
most
in
of
this
these
room.
so-called gangsters pass. Like, hey, look,
And I don't believe those kind of
Hey, look.
people are supposed to be policing.
but
I
why
think that
not?
you're supposed to-
Look at these cops. These cops, you got to understand. You have someone who has a gun in their hand already. You saying a word puts you at risk. If they say police, he could have turned around and started firing. You really got to think about what
I mean,
do we do?
Personally, I understand. I'm looking at this as it's supposed to be the
remove
police.
the emotion. What you
There's
know.
no
hold on,
emotion,
here's,
though.
here's what I'm saying. What you know after the fact, because hindsight's always
Thank you.
2020,
Thank you.
is you know it's a BB gun. You know the kid was 12, and you know he might have had some mental issues. You know that now that he's already dead.
But I know that
But
he
the
probably.
cops don't have the benefit of that information. The only thing they knew was what they heard from that 911
And,
call.
yo, hold
And
on.
understand, they didn't even hear that 911 call. The
Yeah,
operator,
dispatch
the
tells them.
operator heard that 911
yeah, that's
call.
true. That's true.
The operator heard that 911 call and dispatched them. And what they probably heard, no lie, what those officers probably heard was there's a kid in the park with a gun in his hand.
I mean, probably.
And that's
No,
the
and-
only information those cops have.
Hold on.
That's-
And to add
that
on,
still
though, but
doesn't
add
say
on
to me,
your-
shoot first,
your
but go ahead.
scenario,
And
right?
this dude was in a the video that I seen, this dude was in a residential community walking around flailing the gun around.
But think about it.
you
They
know?
probably knew him too. That was probably a local.
None of this says shoot first.
No,
But
no.
let me
Hold
get.
on.
Yeah,
But
that's what
I
I'm
gotta
saying,
explain
like-
something to her because it's like he was probably a local. They probably knew him, and that's why they were like, hey, put down the gun, this, that, and the third. But I'm gonna be honest with you. If he was black, I'm pretty sure they would have clapped him dead.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? So, not to say what I always say, but I'm just saying the media has something to do with that. I'm just saying.
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
I'm just
intern.
saying, like,
No.
Like, put it in perspective like that. Somebody in the park brandishing a gun. When you get that type of call through dispatch, like that's like an urgent call. Somebody's in the car park. You don't know if there's kids playing. That's
Remember,
Listen.
and that's my point about the media. You hear the dispatch call. You hear the person calling, speaking to the operator. You don't hear what they heard through dispatch. I guarantee you, dispatch didn't say the gun's probably fake.
Yeah.
The officers didn't hear that. They heard, we need someone to go to this park. There's a kid there with a gun. And when the officers pulled up, they said, oh shit, he got the gun in his hand. What do we do? We ain't gonna give him a chance to shoot us. We gonna shoot him.
We riding out.
This is what I'm gonna say to you.
I mean, they could have hit him with the car, and he would have at least been alive after. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Question. Hold on.
Y'all niggas think the movies.
No, I think it's real. I'm being real. Is a gun a deadly weapon?
Is a gun
a deadly weapon?
Yeah.
Can a gun kill you?
Yeah. But
okay,
listen,
hold on. Can a
because
man,
I'm not a trained professional.
I'm just asking you. It ain't about trained professional. It ain't about nothing. Can a gun kill you?
Somebody with a gun can kill you.
Yes.
But
okay, so someone with a gun in their hand can kill you.
Yes.
Right? So if someone with a gun in their hand can kill you, and you see someone with a gun in their hand, does that mean your life is at risk?
Yes. But does that mean I have to?
That's all I'm saying.
No, but does that mean I have to take their life first?
Yo, take
but wrong, you really, you're willing.
The question.
You're willing to.
That's what you're supposed to be. That's what, as a police officer, you're really.
A year. That's what you willing to do.
As a police officer, your life is at risk in general. What are you talking about?
Someone with a gun in their hand can kill you.
The wrong house.
So you kill them. That's justifiable homicide.
Hang on. Listen. It can be justifiable homicide. I think we're all going to agree to disagree.
We can. But you know who didn't disagree?
Yeah, I can't.
Courts.
Thank you.
Like, you know.
No, that's fine. I mean, listen.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Look, this is what I mean. Like, if it was me, I wouldn't have shot the kid. I wouldn't have approached it that way. But you got to understand, whoever it was in that car. And you know what? I'm gonna take that back. I might have shot the kid. You know why? If I was the police officer in that car, and I got a dispatch saying there's a kid in the park with a gun. There's a kid in the park brandishing a gun. And when I pulled up, I saw him with the gun in his hand. I'm like, oh shit, how do we de-escalate this? If I say, police, put the gun down, he might turn and start firing.
Thank you.
I don't know how he's going to handle this. So what do I do? I got a kid with a gun in his hand. You want to be real? Let's be real. Is it out of the question that someone might just start shooting random people? Look at that black dude that died because that old black guy who just died because the dude's girlfriend dumped him or something. Mm-hmm. He ran and killed the old man. So now I got people who might die. I might die. This guy got a gun in his hand. Mm-hmm. I'm shooting him, bro.
Well, I think the U.S. just did an excellent job at raising people up.
Rome's not factoring in.
It's nothing I'm not factoring in.
Okay,
but go ahead.
I don't think you're considering is this is their day-to-day job where they see multiple scenarios, multiple situations where they're probably hearing this story from this officer got shot in the line of duty. This person died. This person got
Listen, I have to cut you off already because what I'm looking at, honestly, is all these other countries who do a way better job at de-escalating situations of people with guns. So is the U.S. just fucked up?
So hold on, what country are you talking about? I just explain what country are you talking about.
Sweden.
Yeah. You're talking about a place where there's literally the crime rate doesn't exist.
I don't even care to go into which one.
You're talking about a socialist country where the economy
you can YouTube police officer.
Poverty equates crime.
Guys,
what are you talking about?
You can YouTube police de-escalations. It's not that serious.
I wish we were like Sweden.
That's what I'm not saying.
Sweden.
Yo, this is crazy.
As
long as you understand that the U.S. is fucked up, then that's fine.
Remember what I said. Letter of the law. I'm not saying.
But let me ask a question.
No, go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
So, I guess like in police trainings at the graduation and everything, or like on the last day, do they tell you that with all of your training and all of the knowledge that you've acquired to exercise your own individual like discretion? Because I'm looking at a situation where a police officer was able to like disarm somebody who was flailing a gun successfully, and then another situation with Tamir Rice where it was, in my mind,
one person was scared and the other one wasn't.
Right. So it's just like, why are there I understand that the two stories are obviously like comparable, but I understand that the circumstances are like different. So I guess it's just like, why are there police officers that can successfully disarm people in the same scenarios where police officers aren't successful?
Simple solution or answer. Fight, flight, freeze. You don't know
did
how
the
you're gonna
fight,
react.
flight, free shit with the rape shit from She's Gotta Have It.
But it's true.
And that flight,
I don't know
fight
what
shit.
that is.
Crap.
You just be like, oh, this guy's
I don't. Come on. I feel like that's like.
He always got a cute anecdote. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you always got this like little
Y'all
like
laughing
haiku
doesn't mean
for
all
shit.
right.
I'm
Y'all
saying,
laughing
go ahead,
as
explain.
all
I
right.
don't
So
know.
now,
I
for
said
example,
I don't know what it is.
if Sheens is charging at me, I'm not gonna really feel that threatened by Sheen.
These are
If the
Americans.
intern charges at me, who's 6'3",
I'm still not feeling
200 something, I feel
Why you
a
gonna
little
say like you're not
different.
gonna feel
Nah,
that
but
threat?
I feel a little different. I'm like, this dude could possibly kill me.
I might throw a shoe
I
at
look
you.
at you, I go, I don't think she's gonna kill me. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference. You know, if the raging bull was charging at me, I'm like, yo, this motherfucker will literally kill me. You're gonna react to different things based upon the level of the threat.
I mean, people are different, and people react
to what
different.
G said, like this: if intern was charging at me, like not to be like funny, but I wouldn't feel threatened at all. So therefore, I wouldn't feel the need to like pull a weapon. It's subjective.
Thank you. Bingo.
When you
Bingo.
feel like your life is in danger. I grew up in this neighborhood. I grew up, in Boston. I grew up in, the inner city. I seen people. I know someone can look tough and be a punk. I know people who bluff. I know like you're talking too much to be real. I know I can sense all that. But if you're not from the neighborhood, you don't know the neighborhood, you don't know the major players, and you're scary, you're gonna think everything's a threat.
Bingo.
It's a subjective.
Don't you
Well,
think
I
that's
know that.
hold on,
That's
wait.
the issue. I
But
think
don't
is
you
I think that's a problem.
where
Yeah.
it boils down to someone's subjectivity, where it's either like
I'm
an
like, so you
innocent
tell me
life
these
is
niggas is
taken,
scared.
That's
or
why they should be
don't you
community
think that's a
policing.
problem?
I think you're asking about community policing, right?
Here's the point that I'm trying to make to you guys. You're asking me, do I think a problem personally? Yes, I think it's a problem. Personally, I wouldn't have handled the Tamir Rice situation
No,
that way. Hold
yeah,
on, let me
right.
just finish real quick. But by the letter of the law, meaning legally, proving every element, taking every element into account, it was justifiable homicide. Man
See, I
in
think
park with gun can kill you. You kill him because he could have killed you. You find out the gun's fake later. You can't add the information you get once the scene is secured into the officer's train of thought when the situation was happening. You seen the movie Sully? I love that movie. You seen the movie Sully?
Nah,
So
I heard of
Sully's
it.
about the pilot who
Yes.
landed the plane, and they're saying he had enough time to go back to the airport. He didn't need to land it in the water, right? And their simulation, as soon as the birds hit, right, they automatically turn around and start heading back to the airport. And based on that simulation, they're saying what you did was wrong. But when Sully's actually there, he said, if you guys want to make the simulation real, make it real then. You don't just automatically turn around. You got to figure out what happened. You got to see if you can stabilize. You got to do this. You got to do that. And once they figured that out, all their simulations started crashing. And then it became, holy smokes, how did Sully actually land that plane? And what I'm saying to you guys is you got to make it real. You guys are here like simulations, talking about this, talking about that, or whatever. And you won't know until you're really in that situation. And you got to take all emotion out. You can't take information you know after the fact and then use it the way they were doing in that simulation. So when they were doing the simulation, they already knew everything. So they would turn the plane around immediately. Sully's like, no, in real life, you got to figure out what just happened. There's seconds that go by.
So
then you got to figure out what you're going to do.
So I know you did say that. I know that you did say that it is justifiable homicide. So by that, are you saying that that situation isn't reflective of flaws in the justice system?
No, that's not what I'm saying. When I say it's justifiable homicide, this is what I mean. They can say we reasonably thought our lives were at risk. That's why we killed them. And you can look at that situation and say, yeah, we can see how they thought their lives were at risk. Justifiable homicide.
Do you think that there have been situations where it was easier to say that their lives were at risk in situations where it didn't really pose as a risk? Because who said this? George Zimmerman said the same thing.
George Zimmerman's not a cop.
I guess I'm looking at the way more about how the legal system looks at these cases.
George Zimmerman got off on a Florida law that's called stand your ground.
Yeah.
So that's what got George Zimmerman off. But he's not a cop. And I believe George Zimmerman, what he did was murder. But, I'm not here to to criticize. I believe the prosecution didn't do a good job of presenting the case. I think they went more off emotion than the law, and that's my point. There's the law and then there's emotion. Their closing and their whole case was very passionate. You know, it would make you emotional, and it's the type of case that would make people in churches say, yeah, amen, preach. But they didn't have the legal elements. They didn't meet those elements, and that's my point. You have to hit every element of a crime in order for someone to be guilty. If there's 4 elements to a crime and you only meet 3 of them, that person is not guilty. And they didn't meet every element with George Zimmerman. And I was watching the trial saying that. I was like, guys, you need to do more. You have to do more. And they didn't. And it's unfortunate because I believe George Zimmerman should have been convicted of murder. But the prosecution, the way they prosecuted that case was poor, in my opinion. I would have done a lot of different things. Like, they let some, he trained UFC. They brought some UFC guy in and say, oh, he was terrible. He was horrible. He was this and that. That's all what he said. They never provided any videos. But also, you can be horrible, but we're talking about a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So he said based on like 1 out of 10, he was a 3. My question would have been, how good does a grown man need to be at UFC on a scale from 1 to 10 in order to beat a 14-year-old?
Right.
That weighs 140 pounds.
Right? Trayvon was 17.
17, a 17-year-old who weighs 140 pounds. How good does a grown man have to be on a scale from 1 to 10 to do that?
So can I?
Well, okay. After that, go ahead.
Well, can you explain then the Eric Garner situation where a police officer was on camera choking him to death?
First of all, I don't want you guys to make it seem like I am the defender of all things.
No, I know that.
No,
I know that. I'm just saying, why
perspective,
hasn't that police officer face jail time?
I can tell you why, and then I want you to watch the video again. If you watch the video,
we're gonna let him wrap this.
All right. Yeah. If you watch the video, the officer goes for Eric Garner's arm. It's the first thing he does. And he moves it away and he says, don't touch me. Immediately once he does that, he's resisting arrest. So once he's resisting arrest, they try to grab him again. And he's moving, he's putting his hands up, he's saying, don't touch me. Guys, I know you don't want to see it. He's resisting arrest. He's resisting arrest. The cop clearly tried to arrest him. The cop puts him in a chokehold. He's saying, I can't breathe. Now, to me, he should have let him go. To me, he was excessive. To me, he should have faced something. But what I'm trying to say to people is, don't hold court in the street. Like, if you're trying to reason with a cop, you're giving the cop too much power. And here's why. The cop can only arrest you, bring you to the holding cell. If they got nothing on you, they gotta let you go. You have your day in court in front of a judge. If you get arrested for bogus charges, trust that the judge will see that. Trust that a public defender, trust me, will beat a bogus charge easy. Don't try to talk to a cop. Don't say I know my rights to a cop. Don't do anything. Don't say nothing. Go like this. Go to the holding cell. Go to your court date. You can't hold court in the street with a cop.
I got you. Well,
what if that court date gets delayed?
Listen.
There's that too.
That's we didn't even get to Sandra Bland.
No,
we're definitely gonna get back to it. You know what I mean? I just got a break here. This is the wrap for this episode, and then we're gonna jump back into it. So let me just close this out. I gotta close this out.
This is my last you made me quote a line.
What?
I quote this line. I'm not black.
I don't know.
OJ.
I'm OJ.
That was stupid.
We just gotta talk about
Listen.
Yo, first of all,
let my man wrap up.
He can wrap it up, but let me holler at the intern real quick. Anything after the Black album Jay-Z, that's your Jay-Z.
Listen,
when Jay-Z says people want my old stuff, buy my old album, I'm the one who buys the old album.
Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure you go to upanicd.com, upanicd.com. Scroll down to see join the convo and do so the best way you know how. And that's it. It's Upanic. Talk to y'all next week.
I told the po-po, niggas just chillin', ayy. I told the po-po, niggas just chillin', ayy. man? What up, black man? Got the strap man, got the work man, got the work fam, got the work fam, got the work fam, got the work fam. Does it work fam? Oh man, got the Henny in hand. Oh man, about to roll up a dub all grams on the gram with the dub all damn. That's my drug test fam. That's my drug test fam. What up, black man? What up, African? What up, Jamaican? What up, Haitian? Told 'em we gon' win, be patient. And stay out the streets if you ain't tryna be no patient. Niggas out here hustling, briefcasing. What up, young man? What up, black boy? What up, little man? What up, teacher man? What up, preacher man? What up, gas man? What up, trash man? Smelling like ass man? What up, fat man? Girls thought you wasn't cute, yeah. Now you cash man, now you stash man, now you big dirty laugh last man. Who doing dirt? Who doing that? Who mama him? Who him? That's boy from the block, that's Slim. Did a bit upstate like 10. Now he pray to Allah Muslim. Assalamu alaikum when you see him. Walaikum salam, hit the bomb. Blowing out push, that's strong. I told the po-po, niggas just chillin', hey. I told the po-po, niggas just chillin', hey. What up, black man? What up, black man? Got the strap man, got the work man, got the work fam, got the work fam, got the work fam, got the work fam. Girls have a nigga like all damn. Make you hit the heart on the gram. K-Dog vibes like damn. Plus them breasts for your last. I'd advise you smash. Oh my lord, that ass. I know I'm dead wrong. I know I'm dead wrong, yeah. Bump a seat at the table salon. And that feminine energy strong. Why can't all girls be salon? Or Beyonce. What up, black girl? What up, brown girl? Uptown girl, you got style, girl. A couple like us could really run a town, girl. Who doing dirt? Who doing that? Who mama her? Who her? That's Kevin, baby, I'm from the block, yeah. You know she twerk. Down at the strip club, she work. Them dollar bills ain't her worth. I hope it's better than working that curb. Pops ain't been there since birth. You know her man run that turf. You know he a Pyru blood. You know he like to Subaru in the club till the cops show up. I told the po-po, niggas just chillin', hey. I told the po-po, niggas just chillin', hey. What up, black man? What up, black man? Got the strap man, got the work man, got the work fam, got the work fam, got the work fam, got the work fam. What up, slime? What up,